What's up, Taiwan? I'm Rik Glauert with news from here in Taiwan and around the world. Taiwan President Lai Ching-te and Taipei Mayor Jiang Wan'an both said they wanted social stability in a recent joint public appearance.
最近，台湾面对外在形势的险峻，内部社会也不应该再有太多的风雨与纷扰，一起努力向前，为民谋取最大的福祉。
在咱上山思维长、母娘保庇之下，咱国家会当安全，社会会当安定，人民会当安居乐业。
Their remarks come amid heightened tensions between their respective political parties. Days earlier, Jiang of the opposition Kuomintang or KMT suggested a vote of no confidence against Taiwan's cabinet while attending a rally. The comment came as political friction grows over investigations involving local KMT party leaders. The temple event was the first public appearance by Jiang and President Lai together since that statement. A visiting United States senator says the US wants peace in the Taiwan Strait.
To that end, the United States will continue to assist Taiwan in its self-defense. There is broad consensus in the US Congress to support Taiwan's self-defense.
Speaking in Taipei, Senator Pete Ricketts said that although there had been a change in administration in the US, there was bipartisan support for Taiwan in Congress. The US is Taiwan's most important backer, providing it with the weapons it needs to counter China. Ricketts' visit comes after China held large-scale military exercises around Taiwan, a country it claims as its territory. China's foreign ministry has slammed a US plan to charge port fees for China-built ships, saying the plan will not revitalize US shipbuilding.
我们敦促美方尊重事实和多边规则，立即停止错误的做法。中方将采取必要的措施，捍卫自身的合法权益。
US President Donald Trump plans to impose fees on Chinese ships to help American shipbuilding compete with China, which dominates the industry. China's foreign ministry called the plan harmful to both sides. It comes as part of a bitter trade war between the US and China. The two countries have been slapping tit-for-tat tariffs on each other's goods, with America's overall tariffs now exceeding 145%. 2 decades ago, China built just 5% of the world's marine vessels. Today, it produces the majority of the world's commercial ships. To understand why this challenges the US and how America is trying to compete, our reporter Jeremy Olivier spoke with Matthew Funioli, a senior fellow at the CSIS China Power Project.
So just to get started, we do know that China's shipbuilding capacity has expanded greatly since the turn of the 20th century. What kinds of challenges does this present to the U.S.?
Well, there's really a few different interrelated challenges that it poses. The one that's getting a lot of attention right now in D.C. is on the economic front. China is over 50% of the market share, and it is just growing and growing and growing, attracting new orders. And that's really pushing other competitors out of the market. Now, the U.S. hasn't been a huge factor in shipbuilding for quite some time. So really that squeeze is on some of our allies that are leaders like South Korea and Japan. But on top of the economic issue, there's really some national security concerns that go along with it as well. China's huge domestic shipbuilding capacity, that's helping to fuel its ongoing naval buildup, so that's a concern for the United States. And the other factor is that the shipyards themselves, most of the big ones, most of the major ones that we're looking at, these are dual-use facilities, meaning that they're producing both commercial ships and military vessels at the same time. And what we're seeing and what we saw in a lot of our research is that foreign capital is actually flowing into these shipyards in a number of different ways, helping to subsidize the cost for China's ongoing military modernization.
So in what ways is the U.S. trying to counter what's happening in China, and has it been effective so far?
Well, there's a lot of momentum for this right now, as you sort of mentioned at the top of things. But it's not really something that's new. During the first Donald Trump administration, he kind of started talking about shipbuilding, specifically looking at icebreakers. There was a lot of momentum during the Biden administration, and now we're seeing even more interest in it now. And there's a few different things that are happening. The U.S. Trade Representative conducted a 301 investigation last year, looking to see whether or not China had used unfair trade practices to gain an upper hand in the industry. And then earlier this year, it came out with some recommendations about how to confront that, looking at things like putting fees on Chinese vessels that dock at U.S. ports. And that's still underway. We're still kind of looking and trying to understand exactly what that, how that might materialize. We also expect there to be an executive order on shipbuilding in the next couple of weeks. And there's also the SHIPS Act, which is another piece of proposed legislation to help revitalize the U.S. shipbuilding industry.
One of the key findings of your recent report is that a fair number of U.S. allies, including Taiwan, are looking to China for a significant amount of their fleets. How is it that these countries became so reliant on China for their shipbuilding needs?
This is a big question, and I think it's similar to the story we've heard a number of different times when it comes to China, right? China's able to mobilize its massive economic strength, put state support behind specific industries, behind specific state-owned champions. And what it does is it squeezes competitors out of the marketplace. And that's really what we've seen over the last 2 decades. If you go back to the early 2000s, China was only 5% of the shipbuilding market. Now it's over 50%. And there's been subsidies been in play, but also they produce ships quickly, they produce ships cheaply, and they produce good ships. And so market factors are really just driving companies to China. But I think we've kind of hit a point now where we can't just let market factors be the only thing we're taking into account when we're looking at this type of engagement with China. We really do have to think about the national security implications as well.
So given that these are commercial vessels, in what way does their construction by China benefit that country's military?
I mean, there's a few different factors to think about when you're looking at commercial and military production. Up front, I do want to clarify that they're not the same thing, right? There's different types of technology, there's different processes, there's different personnel that are involved in them. But what we've seen, and we've observed this through years of satellite imagery analysis at CSIS, is that China has undertaken a comprehensive effort to consolidate at some of its biggest industries, expand those actually out, and blur the lines between commercial and military production. And there are benefits to that, right? It's not a perfect system, but there's benefits to that. A big one is that you help to offset the fixed costs of the shipyards with that foreign capital that you're getting for those commercial purchases. These are massive enterprises. These are huge infrastructure projects. And so if you can have, dry docks and gantry trains and floodable basins, and you're building all of those and expanding all of those, and some of the costs of those are being offset by foreign capital that's flowing in, well, you're making it cheaper to build up your naval assets that are also using those same facilities. There's also a cyclical component of this as well. What we've observed is that when shipyards are getting a tremendous amount of new shipbuilding orders, they'll convert a lot of this capacity over to commercial production. And when there's a lull in that, we see an uptick in a lot of the military production at these facilities. And so there's this blurring that's occurring at these shipyards. And it gives China a lot of different ways in which it can leverage that. It can leverage it for commercial might, it can measure it for military might.
That was Matthew Fanioli of the CSIS China Power Project. At least 74 people have been killed in US strikes in Yemen. Drone footage from a fuel terminal on the Red Sea shows the aftermath of the missile strikes. It's the deadliest attack since the US launched a bombing campaign against the Iran-aligned Houthis last year. US President Donald Trump has vowed to continue the campaign until the group stops attacking ships in the Red Sea. Sailors from Pulau and Taiwan are preparing for a historic trip in a traditional double-hulled voyaging canoe. Its aim is to revive an ancient connection between Taiwan's indigenous peoples and Pacific Islanders. To find out more, I spoke to Cesario Saraula, the ship's captain. Can you tell us a little bit more about your voyage using traditional seafaring techniques to travel between Pulau and Taiwan?
This journey from Pulau to Taiwan it's going to be our first in history to sail from Pulau to Taiwan. And it's a little bit of trying to connect all the Pacific Islands together. And mainly it's a cultural exchange between Taiwan and Pulau. It's a double hull Polynesian voyaging canoe. As compared to mechanism voyaging canoe is only a single hull with outrigger. Limited space for supplies. So you can carry at least 3 months supplies on board. Yes, we do have a motor on board just to take us out from the channels. And then when we are out there, and then we mainly use the sail.
And your destination is Taiwan's Orchid Island, home to the indigenous Dao people who share some cultural and linguistic similarities with people in Pulau and other places in the Pacific. What do you expect to find on Orchid Island?
I think Orchid is one of the islands that they still keep their culture with the building their canoes, and there's until now they're still building canoes. So it's been arranged that we need to stay in Orchid for 3 days, just to exchange culture, doing cultural exchange, and then we'll move on to Taitung, where the main event will be big welcoming. So it is Taitung and Orchid community decision that we need to stop in Orchid, and that very much is going to be on their side to answer the questions. But it's just about connection between us and Taitung and Orchid.
And on a personal level, why did you want to make this voyage?
So I'm not sure if it's our ancestors up there telling you need to go here to a connection here, because being all over the world just by doing talk on navigation, I really don't have an idea reason why I'm there, but I always believe that it happens for a reason. So, and I believe the importance of it is it's all about connecting all the islands together, as as we do understand that as Tunisians, as we came from, begins from the Taiwan, and maybe we're heading toward the truth. That's why these trips are happening, and we all understand that all the small island nations are connected by the ocean.
That was Cesario Saraula, a key figure behind this historic voyage. A massive and mysterious discovery off Taiwan's northeastern coast. A complete whale carcass washed ashore on Turtle Island. It was identified by the National Museum of Natural Science last week as a fin whale, the second biggest whale species in the world. To understand just how unique this case is, our reporter Lauren Pattermore spoke with one of the world's leading whale experts, Dr. Phil Clapham, a cetacean biologist based in the US state of Washington.
So this is the first time a fin whale has been washed up on the beaches of Taiwan. Can you tell us just how rare these whales are?
To my knowledge, this is the first confirmed record of a fin whale in Taiwan. There's not much effort there, sighting effort, so we don't really know what's going on, but historically they're not common. The Japanese, when they occupied Taiwan in World War II, operated a couple of whaling stations on the southern coast, and they were taking probably humpback and sperm whales, I'm not sure, but they did not take any fin whales, which actually speaks to just how rare these animals are in that area historically.
And so if they're not commonly found, can you give us any guesses as to how it ended up in Taiwan's waters?
These animals wander over thousands of miles, and so it's quite likely that fin whales on occasion come through Taiwanese waters. How this particular animal died, and if the length that was reported was correct, it would have been a very young calf, probably only a few weeks old. There's a couple of things that typically are threats to these animals and often are a cause of death. One is entanglement in fishing gear. There doesn't seem to be any evidence, for example, scars from fishing gear on this particular animal from what I've seen of it. The other, which is a bit more likely perhaps, is a strike by a ship.
That was Phil Clapham, a cetacean expert based in Washington state. Thank you for watching What's Up Taiwan. Finally, with Easter Sunday just around the corner, we take you to a shop in Paris to check out some festive chocolates. I'm Rik Glauert, take care, and we will see you next time.